It started like any other Thursday. My husband Daniel was working late again. Lately, that had become the norm. We had been married for 8 years, and I couldn't remember the last time he looked at me like I mattered, not just as the mother of his children, but as a woman. The house was quiet when I ordered groceries online. I didn't expect much from the evening, maybe just a quiet dinner alone. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find a man about my age. His name tag read Marco. He had kind eyes, a calm demeanor, and a slight smirk that caught me off guard. He handed me the bags, but then noticed the porch light flickering. "I can fix that if you want," he offered, nodding toward the bulb. I should have said no, but I didn't. He came inside. I fetched a stepladder, and while he worked on the light, we talked. Nothing serious at first, weather, work, how this neighborhood had changed. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, the conversation grew deeper. I admitted how lonely I'd felt. He shared how he'd gone through a painful breakup. I don't know if it was the wine I offered or the way he listened without judgment. I just know that one moment we were sitting across the kitchen island, and the next we were in each other's arms. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. I felt seen. Afterward, reality hit me like a freight train. Marco left quietly. I haven't seen him since. The next morning, I stood in the same kitchen, unable to look myself in the mirror. Daniel texted that he'd be home late again, and I just sat there, feeling every bit the stranger to the woman I thought I was. I haven't told anyone. The weight is unbearable. I thought I could carry it, bury it, pretend it was a mistake that would fade. But it hasn't. It was more than a fling. It was a wake-up call about the emptiness I've been hiding, about how fragile loyalty becomes when you feel invisible. And now, every time the doorbell rings, I hesitate. Afraid it'll be someone else who sees through me, or worse, sees the truth I'm too ashamed to tell. Expanded keynote. Emotional vulnerability leads to unexpected connection. 7. 100 words. Emotional vulnerability is one of the most underestimated forces in human relationships. In many cases of infidelity, it is not lust or a search for excitement that drives a person to cross a line, but rather a deep and unmet emotional need. In long-term relationships or marriages, it is common for couples to fall into patterns, work, routines, drearing bills, obligations. Slowly, without realizing it, the emotional core that once bound two people together begins to erode. This subtle erosion can leave one partner feeling invisible, unappreciated, or disconnected. It's not that love disappears, it's that the emotional closeness that fuels love quietly fades, often unnoticed until a moment of vulnerability opens the door to someone else. In the story of the delivery, Guy stayed longer than expected. The woman involved didn't plan to be unfaithful. In fact, what she craved more than physical attention was simply someone who noticed her, someone who saw her as more than a caregiver, a planner, or a partner in logistical survival. Her emotional vulnerability had been building for months, maybe even years. She found herself alone often, physically and emotionally. Her husband, immersed in work, hadn't intentionally neglected her, but the result was the same. She felt like a ghost in her own life, performing the role of wife and mother, but with no one really seeing her internal struggles. When Marco, the delivery man, arrived, he represented something her marriage had long been lacking: attentiveness and presence. The interaction between them started innocently. A conversation here, a shared laugh there. It didn't scream infidelity. But what made that interaction different from hundreds of other exchanges she had daily was the attention he gave her. He listened without judgment. He offered help without expectation. He treated her like a woman, not just a role. That simple act of being fully present touched a raw nerve she hadn't even known was exposed. Emotional vulnerability doesn't always wear a sign around its neck. Sometimes it masquerades as exhaustion, irritability, or even silence. But when someone finally shows up and genuinely listens, it can spark a dangerous but deeply human connection. For many people, especially women in emotionally starved relationships, physical intimacy is not the goal, emotional safety is. The hug that lingers too long, the shared stories, the eye contact that feels like understanding, all of these can quickly become addictive to someone who's been emotionally starving. In the context of this story, Marco wasn't special in the traditional sense. He wasn't a movie star or a seductive manipulator. He was kind, present, open. Those qualities, simple as they sound, created a spark where a fire had long gone out. The woman didn't fall for Marco. She fell for the feeling he gave her, the feeling of being seen, of being wanted, of being human again. It's not that she didn't love her husband, it's that she hadn't felt loved by him in a long time in the way that mattered most to her. This kind of emotional affair, even when it crosses into physical, is often misunderstood. It's easy to label it as selfish or immoral, and in many ways it is a betrayal. But it is also a symptom of a deeper relational wound. Affairs like this reveal how fragile human connection can be when left unattended. Emotional vulnerability doesn't always lead to infidelity, but it always seeks relief. If that relief isn't found within the relationship, it may find its way elsewhere through a co-worker, an old friend, a stranger, or yes, even a delivery guy who stays longer than expected. The tragedy is not just the infidelity itself, but the fact that it often takes such a rupture for both partners to realize how disconnected they've become. By the time someone steps outside the marriage, it's often because they no longer believe their emotional needs will ever be met at home. The act of cheating, then, is not just about betrayal, it's about despair, loneliness, and longing for recognition. This story powerfully underscores how unmet emotional needs can turn even the most ordinary interactions into meaningful and ultimately dangerous emotional entanglements. Emotional vulnerability, when not acknowledged or cared for, can transform a simple human connection into a deeply complicated affair that leaves lasting emotional scars for everyone involved. Guilt is one of the heaviest emotions to carry after an act of infidelity, particularly when the betrayal is not born from malice but from emotional desperation. In the story where a simple grocery delivery led to an unexpected affair, the aftermath is drenched in emotional conflict. The woman didn't anticipate that her actions, which felt momentarily comforting and validating, would spiral into a web of silence, shame, and regret. Infidelity rarely ends with the physical act that is often just the beginning. What follows is a flood of complex emotions: guilt for betraying a partner, fear of being discovered, confusion about what the act meant, and an overwhelming sense of internal disorientation. After the delivery guy left, reality came rushing back in, sharp and cold. The woman found herself unable to recognize who she had become. She didn't wake up that morning planning to cheat, yet she crossed a line that she could never uncross. The regret wasn't immediate lust turning sour, it was the slow, burning realization that she had compromised her integrity in a desperate attempt to feel something real. The emotional high she experienced in that moment of connection was followed by a deep emotional crash. Every familiar part of her life, her home, her children's drawings on the fridge, her wedding ring, became a painful reminder of what she risked and what she might still lose. Secrecy becomes the shield in these situations, but it's not a comfortable one. It's heavy. The lie lives in the background of every interaction. When her husband returned home, tired but unaware, she smiled and went through the motions of everyday life, all while hiding something that changed her completely. The silence she kept wasn't just to protect herself, it was also because she couldn't even begin to articulate what had happened or why. How do you explain that you didn't cheat out of desire, but out of emotional hunger? How do you say that you felt invisible, and for a brief moment, someone saw you? The secrecy erodes a person from the inside. There are no visible consequences, no dramatic confessions, just the slow decay of self, esteem, and trust. Every word spoken feels slightly dishonest. Every touch from her husband becomes a reminder that he doesn't know the truth. She tells herself it was a one-time mistake, something she can bury, but the emotional weight doesn't go away. The regret isn't just about the act, it's about what it reveals, about her unhappiness, about how easily her boundaries dissolved, about how deeply disconnected she had become from her own life. There is also the fear of discovery. Not necessarily because she fears punishment, but because the truth would detonate everything: her marriage, her role as a mother, her identity as someone who thought she was loyal, committed, good. She looks in the mirror and sees someone she no longer recognizes, someone who betrayed her own values for a fleeting moment of connection. The fear isn't just about her husband's reaction, it's about facing the version of herself she tried so hard not to become. Regret, secrecy, and the emotional aftermath of infidelity do not always lead to confession or reconciliation. Sometimes they lead to silence, internal isolation, and a painful awareness that the relationship, even if it continues, will never feel the same. That moment with the delivery guy didn't just break trust, it broke her sense of who she was in her own story. And the challenge now isn't just whether she tells the truth, but whether she can live with it. Whether she can find her way back to emotional honesty with her partner, and most painfully, with herself.